والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, many of us are familiar with the story of one of the incidents that occurred with Musa alayhi salam and Bani Israel. This occurrence is mentioned to us in detail in Surah Al-Ma'idah in the first third. And we know that chronologically this happened after the destruction of Pharaoh and his people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivered Musa and Bani Israel from the clutches of Pharaoh, from the bondage that they were in. He split the sea for them. They crossed the sea. He destroyed their enemies as they watched at their feet. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them to the city that they were promised. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this quote unquote promised land by saying, الأرض المقدسة التي كتب الله لكم. That Musa alayhi salam instructed his people to enter the land, the holy land, which Allah has prescribed for you, which He has written for you. Now, written here doesn't mean decree. What it means here is that He has prescribed legislatively that this is something that is for you to earn. And so the people that were with Musa alayhi salam, for the most part, were very cowardly. They refused to enter. And they said, "Inna fiha qawman jabbarin." It has a very powerful people in it. وَإِنَّا لَن نَدْخُلَهَا حَتَّى يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا. And we are never going to enter that land until they are completely gone from it. فَإِنْ يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا فَإِنَّا دَاخِلُونَ. And as soon as they leave, we'll enter. Now, basically what they are demanding from Musa alayhi salam is that they put in zero effort and are given all of the rewards. And this is a sense of entitlement that the people of Bani Israel started to develop after the destruction of Pharaoh, which led to their exile in the desert for 40 years. Musa alayhi salam and his brother Harun, they instructed them, just enter the door. ادخلوا عليهم الباب فإذا دخلتموه فإنكم غالبون. Just enter through the gates of the city. If you can muster up enough courage and enough valor to just make it through the gates of the city, indeed you're going to be victorious. Now, this statement, enter through the gates, it could be understood a number of ways. It could be understood that the hardest step in battle is the first blow. Once that happens, and a person is in it, and there's no turning back, and there's no more control over being paralyzed by fear, after that, the battle goes naturally, and a person's natural valor will come out. That's one understanding. Another understanding is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them a swift victory, but they have to make some effort. And so, in spite of this, they refused. They said, إِنَّا لَن نَدْخُلَهَا مَا دَامُوا فِيهَا فَاذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that they said, we will never go even through the gates of that land. We will never go into that city as long as these people are there. So you and your Lord go fight, and we're going to wait right here for you. Basically, tell us when it's over. And instead of just having that day or that few hours of fighting, something that's difficult, something that involves tragedy, something that involves sadness, something that involves difficulty, instead of mustering up the courage and patience to push through those few unpleasant beginnings in order to reap the fruits, instead they chose to be exiled for 40 long years. Musa alayhi salam made dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separate him from the people of fusuq, the people of sinfulness amongst Bani Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did that in a very wise way. And what was that? That he caused them to be lost in the desert for 40 years. 40 years is an average generation. So most, if not all, of the people that stood at the gates that day and said to Musa alayhi salam, you and your Lord go fight and we'll wait here, by the time those 40 years and they emerged from exile, all of those people were dead at that point. We're a completely new generation by then. And so what do we understand from this story? There's a few benefits to take from this. Number one, that the good people amongst us and the bad people amongst us, whether we like it or not, we're connected. What you do affects me, and what I do affects the greater whole. And unfortunately, even though we had Musa alayhi salam and Harun and perhaps a band of men with them that were very righteous and very dedicated to the cause of Allah, except that the majority of them were cowards, the majority of them were people of sinfulness, and the good among them suffered because of the foolishness of the bad. Another benefit that we can learn from this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far more generous than his servant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, go through the gates and you'll be given victory. Go through the gates. This is reminiscent of a narration collected in a Sahih on the authority of Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, قال الله عز وجل, Allah himself has said, إذا تقرب إلي عبدي شبرا تقربت إليه ذراعا. If my servant comes close or gains nearness to me a handspan, then I come closer to him a cubit. وإذا تقرب إلي ذراعا تقربت منه باعا. And if he comes to me a cubit, I will come to him an arm's length. وإن أتاني يمشي أتيته هرولة. And if he comes to me walking, I come to him, at a higher pace. Running is kind of an incomplete translation. It's a little bit less than that. But the point here is that whatever efforts we put in with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are given back to us tenfold. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us in the Quran. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا. That a person who does one good deed, for him is 10 times that one good deed. And whoever commits a sin, makes a mistake, then it is only counted against him as one. Right? And this is, all of these things that we have just heard now in this story reflect one of the names of Allah, Ash-Shakur. Ash-Shakur. Ash-Shakur in the Arabic language comes from thankfulness. from a shukr. But the way that this word is structured in its morphology, it articulates an exaggerated amount of thankfulness or thanks. And it as well can be understood in two lights. It doesn't just mean the one who is worthy of all thanks, the one who is worthy of extreme thanks, but it as well means the one who gives extreme thanks. Meaning that when a person does something good, Allah thanks him for what he does and gives him reward and in return. And so a shakur is the one who is worthy of all thanks, the one who gives the most proper and complete of thanks and appreciation, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us of those who are in constant thankfulness to Him. We ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that He enlighten our hearts, that He enlighten our minds with the Quran, that He bless us with this book, the Quran, make it a true running river throughout our hearts and chests. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa jazakumullahu khayran.